Whom are we visiting?
Here the family.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
Or 5?
4.
4. Thank you for inviting us to your home. And this is your Srimad Bhagavatam set. Okay. And the others are just friends or?
No, all my family.
Family members. Well, they're cousin?
Her daughter.
Okay. Okay.
And my brother.
Your brother? He's the elder brother. Okay.
Cousin.
Cousin brother. Live nearby?
Yes. 3 miles away.
Only 3 miles.
Stone throwing distance.
Stone throwing. You got a good throw arm. And are you learning how to eat with chopsticks or what's that? Huh?
You already know how to.
You already know.
Okay, little bit.
Where did you learn?
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay. You learned, but you don't know when you learned.
I just learned randomly.
Randomly. Do you eat with chopsticks sometimes? No, you just carry them around. I've been to China and I've eaten with chopsticks.
Only one time I did.
Okay. Okay. Now, do you know who is Krishna? Yes? Okay. What is the teaching that Krishna, what's the name of the book of the teaching that Krishna gave? It starts with a B. I see some copies of it right over there. Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, spoken by Krishna, right? Okay. Well, Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna, and this one, Srimad Bhagavatam, is spoken about Krishna. And the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, his name is Shukadeva Goswami. Shukadeva Goswami is the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. And actually, even before he spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, well, after he spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, it was spoken again. So let's give a little background because I just spent 10, 15 minutes on what Srimad Bhagavatam is. Srimad Bhagavatam is part of a vast library, a body of wisdom called Veda. Veda means knowledge. It's a big library. And one part of that vast body of literature is Srimad Bhagavatam. And this big vast body of literature is compared sometimes to a desire tree. Vriksha is the word for tree, and a kalpa vriksha is a desire tree. A kalpa vriksha fulfills desires according to anything you want. You know, most trees, it's an apple tree or a pear tree or a peach tree or a coconut tree or a something tree. And during season, apples or mangoes or bananas or whatever, fruit of one kind. But the Vedic tree is all kinds of fruit all the time. But it's the ripened fruit, there's a long description, but the ripened fruit, at the very top of the tree that gets full exposure to the sun, the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge is the Srimad Bhagavatam because it provides the essence, Sara, the essence of all knowledge. And it's a commentary, this Srimad Bhagavatam is a commentary on that portion of the Vedas because Vyasadeva compiled the Vedas. He summarize the essence in little codes called sutras, Vedanta sutras. And Bhagavatam explains them by the author himself, Vyasadeva. So a little background. I'm going to describe, let's see, the first 7 chapters of Canto 1 quickly. In the first 3 chapters, in one sense, the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is summarized in the first 3 chapters. Because there's introductory verses, the first few verses, what the Bhagavatam is. And then after the introductory verses, there's a scene that's described where in Naimisharanya forest, I've been to Naimisharanya forest, it's a very nice place, it's near Lucknow, it's in UP, and it's a place where it's said the Naimisharanya is a holy place because the axis of the universe passes through there. And so sages would go there to perform yajna because the yajna that they would do there would go throughout the whole universe. The benefit of the yajna would be distributed through the whole universe. So they went to Naimisharanya, sages, just after the departure of Krishna, because they knew, they were sages, they knew what that meant. It meant, after Krishna departs, the next yuga begins. And the next yuga is a bad one. That's this one. So they wanted to do something, because they're sages, they wanted to do something to minimize the bad effects of this age. So they gathered at Naimisharanya to perform a yajna. The plan was to have a yajna after the next yajna after the next yajna to last for 10,000 years, non-stop, and the previous one start the next one. However, when they assembled and they began their yajnas, in their midst came one person named Sutta. Sutta Goswami was the son of Ramaharshan Sutta. Ramaharshan Sutta was entrusted one portion of the Vedas by Vyasa when he compiled them. So Sutta starts narrating Srimad Bhagavatam by the sages asking questions, 6 questions. They're in the chapter 1. The 6 answers are in the next 2 chapters. The Srimad Bhagavatam is just expanding on those 6 questions and answers. So after hearing, here's the 6th question. It's a good question. Now that Krishna has departed, because when he was present, just by the touch of his lotus feet, everything was sanctified. All inconsistency in Dharma was checked, and everything was flourishing. Dharma was protected, everything was flourishing, but Krishna's gone. So now, where will religious principles take shelter and be protected? Good question. The answer, shortly after Krishna's departure, like the setting of the sun in the west, shortly thereafter, the Srimad Bhagavatam appeared. That was as brilliant as the sun, but as cooling as the moon. Because when Krishna came, he had weapons. He had a chakra, he had a club, and he used them. When there were obstacles or adharma, he took care of it. But Bhagavatam doesn't have a chakra or a club. But it's very cooling, and it gives shelter to religious principles. So that was very nice. That was the first 3 chapters. And then chapter 4 begins with the sages in Naimisharanya saying, oh, Srimad Bhagavatam is so important. Can you describe how it appeared? You know, the moon rising in the east is brilliant as the sun. How did it appear? So the next 3 chapters are describing how it appeared. So in chapter 4, there's a description of Vyasadeva. Do you know who is Vyasadeva? You're not sure. He didn't eat with chopsticks, I'll tell you that. Vyasadeva was an incarnation of Krishna who came specifically to write down the Vedas, because here's what happens. In the previous ages, people had really good memories. When they heard something once, they remembered it the rest of their life. I'll say it again. When they heard something once, they understood it, and they remembered it for the rest of their life. But when the age of Kali arrives, memory diminishes. Lots of things diminish, and that's one of the things that diminishes. So Vyasadeva knew that, and he wanted to preserve the Vedas, so he had them written down. He didn't just write them down. There was one Veda, and he had it compiled in 4 parts. Veda, Vyasa. Vyasa means divide. Veda Vyasa. So he compiled all the Vedas. He wrote this literature, the Mahabharata, is a certain category of history that goes chronologically, and the Puranas that don't go necessarily chronologically, but they are describing history. It's taking the teachings and showing, here's what it looks like in life. Here's Dharma, and here's Adharma, and here's what it looks like in history form, real history. And then he wrote the Vedanta Sutra, which summarizes everything. It's a tarka. It's a logical presentation based on, reason and logic, and in 4 parts. And he was done. That's the end of chapter 4. And he sat back like you do after you finish something, after you finish cooking a meal, or making a painting, or doing your homework assignment, some essay that you had to write or something like that. And you step back and you go, how did it come out? Vyas did that. And when he did that, he felt something's not right. Why am I feeling like that? He was pondering. I'm feeling insufficient. Something's wrong. His spiritual master, Narada Muni, came right at the right time. And then chapter 5 begins, and they have some discussion about what went wrong. And what went wrong was you compiled, the compiling of knowledge of the Vedas is not wrong, but you made too much emphasis on how this desire tree example, people now, they already have materialistic tendencies, and you gave explanations of how they can fulfill their material desires through the Vedas. And that's right, they can. But you haven't given sufficient emphasis on what's the purpose behind all of that. What's the purpose behind all of that? Is to connect with the source of everything, the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. So here's what you should do. I'm making it short. Here's what you should do. 2 things. Sit in a trance of meditation, samadhi. Samadhi means trance of meditation. And what you realize, compile one literature that's just that, the absolute truth. He followed what he said, and he compiled. Now, in this discussion between Narada and Vyas, when he told them what to do, I'm going to read one verse, because that's what I was supposed to do. Read one verse. But this one verse comes in the introduction section of every one of these volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's such an important verse. And it starts, Tadvag Visargo Janata Aghaviplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadyavat Svapi. And the meaning is, you can find it, it's in the preface. It's not even page numbers yet, it's still Roman numeral numbers. The verse says, Tad Vag, Vak means to say, make sound, speak. Visarga means creating. Those compositions, Tadvag Visarga, Janata Agha. Agha means sin. Janata means people in general, like the Janata Party. Janata Agha Viplava. Viplava means kaboom, explosion, revolution. That literature which is composed, which gives glorification of the personality of Godhead, yasmin pratishlokam abhadhyavatsvapi, api, even though it may be irregularly composed, when it's just direct glorification of the personality of Godhead, it has the power to bring about a revolution in the lives of the people of the age of Kali, Janata Agha people. Not because they're bad people, it's just it's a bad age. It's a bad age, and everything becomes deteriorated. Compassion, kindness, memory, interest in spiritual knowledge, and so forth and so on. It's described in the earlier chapters. It's a bad situation, but that's counteracted by that literature. So compose such a literature. This is part of the instruction. Namanyanantasya yashon katanyat shrinvanti gayanti grananti sadavaha. Namanyanantasya yashon katanyat. The beginning with the name. So the name, because very soon we're going to be reading about Lord Chaitanya. So the name of Krishna or his expansions or his associates, and Krishna-related subject, sound vibration, it has a purifying effect. And that literature, that sound vibration, when Shrinvanti, Gayanti, Grananti. That's the sequence. Hearing, vibrating, letting it enter into your heart. It makes the heart clean. Makes the heart clean. Shrinvanti, Gayanti, Grananti, Sadavaha. Sadhava, those who are sadhus, or those who are thoroughly honest, is how it's translated. They're very pleased. So by inviting Srimad Bhagavatam into your home, just having, the scriptures say, not only Bhagavatam says, but other scriptures say, a home that has Srimad Bhagavatam, just by sitting on your shelf, just having, it's like inviting a guest into your home that's a sadhu. Inviting Krishna into your home is more than inviting a sadhu into your home. It purely sanctifies your home. And as you read it, it sanctifies your heart. It's designed like that. It has that potency. So just by hearing this sound vibration, your external life doesn't have to change. The internal life changes. How you experience life changes. How you experience the world. And how you relate to the world and relate to people. And, at a consciousness level, things change. They start to move around. Just by that sound vibration. So you can find that verse in the preface. It's the very end of the preface, and it's just taken from Canto 1, Chapter 5. No, Chapter 5. So Vyasadeva does what Narada said. He sat down in trance, and he had some realization, and that realization comes at the beginning, first few verses of Chapter 7. You can read them again and again and again and again and again and again because they're very deep. And the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam is, again, explaining those 3-4 verses. That's, little quickie overview of the first few chapters of Canto 1. And there's a lot of chapters over here. 18,000 verses. But it's meant for cleansing the heart and awakening transcendence. Now, there's 2 points I want to make before I begin reading. One is from our discussion earlier today. There were some of us were participating at least. There was one of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. So who is Lord Chaitanya? He is Krishna himself, who came to teach how to fulfill the instruction that Krishna gave in Bhagavad Gita. The concluding instruction of Bhagavad Gita is 1866. Sarva dharmam parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yeshyami masuchaha. Krishna's concluding instruction is, all other teachings of Dharma are subordinate to one. And the one is Mam Ekam Sharanam. That's it, the Bhagavad Gita. Take shelter of Krishna. Give body, mind, and words to Krishna in his service. Take shelter of him. So how to do that, Lord Chaitanya came to teach. And we were reading this morning about, or just midday, reading about Lord Chaitanya's childhood pastimes. Actually, he was a youth. At this time, he was 16. And he was a teacher of grammar, Sanskrit grammar. And he was a really good teacher. He was such a good teacher. He had thousands of students. And he had little groups that he was instructing in Sanskrit. And a renowned traveling, debating pundit, Digvijay from Kashmir, was traveling all over India, challenging people, and when he defeated them, he'd have them sign a thing saying, I've been defeated. And he had following, he had elephants, he had horses, he was a big guy. So he came to Navadvip. So we were discussing about him today. And there was some question, there was 2 questions. One question was, who is this Keshava Kashmiri in Krishna Leela? So I said I would research it, and I couldn't find an answer. But something I did find, I think it's relevant to share. After his pride was withdrawn by the purity of Nimai's association and the exchange that they had. There's some details which I won't go because of time, but his pride was removed. His pride was completely gone. And later, when he continued, Lord Chaitanya said, use your scholarship, not for debate and argument and, getting people to surrender to you and stuff like that. Use it for glorifying Krishna. Write one literature that's just glorifying Krishna. Use your academic capacity for that purpose. So he did. And later, Keshava Kashmiri, this is the news to report, according to Srila Prabhupada's words in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he later became a follower or a member of the Nimbarka Sampradaya. Now, the Nimbarka Sampradaya is one of the 4 sampradayas mentioned in the Padma Purana that are bona fide sampradayas coming originally from the personality of Godhead and still intact today. And it's still intact today. And the Nimbarka Sampradaya, like the sampradaya that we're part of, they have a lot of emphasis on Radharani, the exalted nature of the gopis, and the very special position of Radharani. So he became a member of the Nimbarka Sampradaya and an acharya who wrote on their behalf. He made a commentary on Nimbarkacharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra. He was quite a scholar. But he switched from just being a scholar to becoming a Vaishnava by Lord Chaitanya's association. So I wanted to share that with you. And 2 evenings ago, it's another bit of news. We had some discussion 2 evenings ago about a verse from the fact that sometimes one acharya, even in the same line, will speak something slightly different than another acharya within the same line. And it's not like contradiction or one-upping the other one, or, I'm right, so you're wrong, and or vice versa. There's none of that. So this handout, you can look at it later. I'll just mention. It's from Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, text number 10. Bhagavad Gita, in Chapter 1, it's, according to Baladev Vijayabhusan, it's Shainya Darshana, or the Darshan of warriors. Prabhupada calls it in Bhagavad Gita, observing the battlefield. And in that commentary, Baladev Vijayabhusan's commentary, he chooses to translate it's Duryodhana speaking about who's on which side of the battlefield, on this side and that side. And in you can look at it later for detail. He says, Baladev says, that Duryodhana was taking it that on his side they were well organized and the other side was not so well organized in comparison to we're going to be victorious. And that's also how Prabhupada read it, or translated it. You can see in this sheet later. But Baladev was a not initiated disciple, but a Shiksha disciple of a previous acharya named Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. They were contemporaries. And Vishwanath flipped it around the other way, which was Duryodhana was saying, we're less organized, they're better organized. We're less completely organized, they're completely organized. Doesn't look good. And then there's a footnote at the bottom that says Ramanujacharya took the same meaning as Vishwanath. So, and Sridhar Swami, who is the foremost commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Chaitanya looked up to, all of that it's detail. For those of you that don't like detail, it's very boring. But the point I want to make is sometimes, even in the same disciplic succession, or one disciplic succession and another, they have different points of view. And it's quite okay. Especially when the one that has a differing point of view isn't going, I'm right, they're wrong. And one-upping in a competitive spirit, or fault-finding or challenging spirit. That's not okay. And that's not so, but sometimes the Sanskrit can be read in different ways. And they're taking the Sanskrit meaning, where it's grammatically correct to take it this way, or grammatically correct to take it that way. And that's how it strikes their heart. So much of what strikes your heart depends upon your relationship with Krishna and your faith in Krishna. So what we're doing, spending time with Srimad Bhagavatam, now shortly with a little bit with Bhagavad Gita, then again Lord Chaitanya, it's cleansing and lifting the heart. And all of the details are less important than lifting your heart. I remember when I first read Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, Bhagavad Gita was like a big puzzle. If you can imagine, an American kid that knew nothing about nothing, and reading all these different names of all these different warriors, and I was like, what's next? Let me go to chapter 2. So the details are the details of who's who did what, and all that. It's interesting, but the essence is drawing attention to Krishna and recognizing our real position of happiness is being in our relationship with Krishna. And how to live your life in such a way you can live your life contentedly in relationship with Krishna. That's the essence. So a few of us know something about Lord Chaitanya. Most of you, because you're a little newer, then it's like me reading Bhagavad Gita or Ramayana or Mahabharata or, what? It's new. So don't worry about it, it's new. It's appreciate that it's the personality of Godhead engaging in loving dealings with his devotees. So we read the Digvijay discussion, the defeating the wandering debater. And now we're going to the next chapter. And it's a shorter chapter. After this event of interacting, he's a 16-year-old young man. He's in Vedic culture, he was married by that time. It was, there were no children, but he was officially, his mother was widowed. His father had departed this world. His elder brother left to take sannyas. She had a number of daughters that were born and died shortly after birth. She was alone. And the only family member that was there for her was her son. So she was in anxiety. So her son understood the anxiety. It's a transcendental pastime, and he accepted marriage. And so he became married. That was in an earlier chapter. So he's married, his wife, Lakshmi Priya. She was a little younger than him. And she's in the home with Mother Sachi. Sachi is the name of his mother, Mother Sachi, or Sachi Mata. And she's like Supermom. She's universal mother. We heard several stories about how she conducted herself as a mother. She's a pretty amazing person. So he begins some travel as a teacher, and in his absence, his wife dies of separation. She's really attached to her husband. Now, that's the Leela. And now going to those of you that know something about Lord Narayan and his worship, often he's worshipped with Sri and Bhu. Yes? Yes. So Lakshmi Priya is Sri. And when Sri is without Narayan, she can't maintain her life and she dies in separation. That's what we're going to be hearing this chapter. It's a pastime. All glories to the Supreme Lord Sri Gaurasundara. All glories to Lord Nityananda's beloved Lord, who has an eternal form. All glories to him who is the life of Pradyumna Mishra. Pradyumna Mishra is spoken about later. He appears in Puri. All glories to him who is the goal of life of Paramananda Puri. Paramananda Puri is one of the disciples of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. Oh, excuse me, he's one of the godbrothers of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. So he's like his uncle. Very elder, very, very learned, very exalted person, Paramananda Puri. All glories to him who is the life and soul of all the Vaishnavas. O Lord, please deliver the fallen souls with your merciful glance. My dear brothers, please hear with attention the topics of Adi Kanda, wherein the pastimes of Krishna in the form of a Brahmana are described. In this way, the Lord of Vaikuntha continually enjoyed his scholastic pastimes with his students. This is after defeating the traveling debater, Digvijay Pandit. Everyone throughout Navadvip heard that Nimai Pandit was the crushed jewel among teachers. Even the wealthy materialists would get down from their palanquins to offer respects to Nimai. Everyone was filled with awe and reverence on seeing the Lord. There was no one in Navadvip who was not under his control. He's just a 16-year-old boy, but he's the Lord, so his influence is impacting their hearts and their lives. Whenever any resident of Vrindavan would perform any pious act, he would without fail first send some foodstuffs and cloth to the Lord's house. The Lord displayed the pastimes of a munificent person. For this is the nature of the Supreme Lord. He constantly gave gifts to the poor. Whenever Gora Hari met a poor person, he would immediately give him rice, cloth, and money out of compassion. Guests, now he's a householder, so it's exemplary. Brahmanas receive charity, they give in charity. Prabhupada would repeat this over and again. 6 occupations. Yajan, Patan, Dhan, Patigraha. They would worship and they would teach others to worship. They would study the scripture. They would teach others the scripture. They would receive in charity and give in charity. Brahmana's 6 occupations. So he was a grahasta, so now he's giving in charity because that's a grahasta's duty. Setting a nice standard. Sometimes 10 or 20 sannyasis would come, and the Lord would happily invite them for lunch. He would immediately send someone to inform his mother to quickly arrange lunch for 20 sannyasis. Ooh. Lakshmi Devi cooked the offering with full satisfaction, and then the Lord arrived home. The Lord personally watched as the sannyasis were served their meal. After they were fully satisfied, he bid them farewell. In this way, the merciful Lord inquired about the needs of every one of his guests. Mahaprabhu taught the householders, quote, "The foremost duty of a householder is to serve his guests. If a householder does not serve his guests, he is considered lower than the birds and beasts. If, due to his previous impious acts, he does not have anything, then he should satisfy his guests with a straw mat, some water, and a place to lie down. In the houses of pious people, there may be a scarcity of rice or other staples due to poverty, but a straw mat, water, and resting place and sweet words should always be available for serving guests." Very good cultural point. If one has nothing more to offer, he should apologize without duplicity. Then he is not guilty of neglecting his guest. If a householder happily serves his guests without duplicity and according to his ability, he is considered hospitable. Therefore, the Lord personally invited his guests with great respect. All those guests were most fortunate, for they received foodstuff directly from Lakshmi Narayan. Foodstuffs so wonderful that they are described even by the demigods headed by Brahma, and were now eaten by one and all. In reply to this, someone said, "It is not possible for ordinary persons to receive such foodstuffs. Brahma, Shiva, Shukadev, Vyasa, Narada, as well as the demigods and siddhas, who traveled according to their desire, all knew that Lakshmi Narayan had appeared in Navadvip. They therefore all visited the Lord's house to beg alms in the form of mendicants. Otherwise, who else had the power to visit his house? And who other than personalities like Brahma can receive such foodstuffs?" Someone else said, "The Lord has incarnated to deliver the distressed, and he therefore employs various means for their deliverance. The demigods, headed by Brahma, are born from the limbs of the Supreme Lord, and they are always associated with the Lord. Still, in this incarnation, he has promised to give that which is rarely attained by even Brahma. Therefore, the Lord personally fed the distressed in his house in order to deliver them." Lakshmi Devi cooked alone, yet she felt supremely blissful. As the fortunate Mother Sachi observed the character of Lakshmi, her joy increased every hour of the day. Beginning from sunrise, Lakshmi would personally perform all the household chores As her religious duty, she would decorate the floor of the temple with drawings of swastikas, conchas, and discs. She arranged sandalwood paste, flowers, incense, ghee lamps, and scented water for the worship of Lord Vishnu. She constantly served Tulsi, yet she served Sachi even more. Seeing Lakshmi's behavior, Sri Gaurasundar did not comment, yet he was satisfied within. Some days, Lakshmi would sit and hold the Lord's feet for hours. Mother Sachi sometimes saw brilliant effulgent flames emanating from the feet of her son. Another day, Mother Sachi smelled the fragrance of lotus flowers throughout the house. As Lakshmi Narayan secretly lived in Navadvip in this way, no one was able to recognize them. After a few days, the independent Lord desired to visit Bangladesh. The Lord told his mother, it was East Bengal, now Bangladesh. The Lord told his mother, "Dear mother, I will go on a journey for a few days." Sri Gaurasundar then said to Lakshmi, "You should constantly serve mother." Then the Lord took some of his students and happily departed for East Bengal. Whoever saw the Lord in his travels could not take his eyes off him. The woman said, "Glorious is she who has such a son. We offer our obeisances to her. Fortunate is she who has such a husband. The life of that chaste lady has become successful." In this way, all the ladies and men who saw the Lord as he passed repeatedly glorified him in full satisfaction. That Lord, whom even the demigods desire to see now, mercifully appeared before the vision of everyone. In this way, Gaurasundar arrived in a few days on the bank of the Padmavati River. The current of the Padmavati River is most charming, and her fine banks are covered with forest groves. Seeing the Padmavati, the Lord joyfully took bath with his students. Since that day, the fortunate Padmavati River became fit to sanctify the entire world. The Padmavati River appeared most beautiful, being decorated with enchanting waves, banks, and flowing current. The Lord was so pleased to see the Padmavati that he remained there a few days to increase her good fortune. Just as the Lord had joyfully sported in the waters of the Ganges with his students, now the Padmavati achieved the same good fortune, as the Lord daily sported in her waters. Because Sri Gaurasundar entered East Bengal, it is considered glorious even today. People were overjoyed to hear that Gaurchandra was staying on the banks of the Padmavati River. News soon spread in all directions. "Oh, the crest jewel of all teachers, Nimai Pandit, has arrived in the banks of the Padmavati." The fortunate Brahmanas all came to welcome the Lord with various gifts. Coming before the Lord, they offered their obeisances and humbly spoke as follows: "We consider ourselves most fortunate because of your arrival here. That rare touchstone to whom we were to go with friends and money to study in Navadvip has now been brought to our doorstep by providence. There is no other teacher like you, for you are like an incarnation of Brahaspati. Rather, to compare you with Brahaspati is insufficient. We consider you a portion of the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, such knowledge is not possible in anyone other than the Supreme Lord. This is our firm conviction. Now we have one request of you. Please give us all some knowledge. O best of the Brahmanas, please hear us. We study, teach, and accept only your explanations. Now please accept us as your students and let the entire world sing your glories." The Lord smiled and agreed to their request. Thus he enjoyed pastimes in East Bengal for some days. Due to this good fortune, the men and women of East Bengal engaged in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtana movement every day. Sometimes, sinful persons try to mislead people by accepting their homage for themselves. But in order to fill their bellies, these sinners cheat people by claiming to be Lord Ram. Other sinful persons give up chanting of the names of Krishna and claim to be Narayan. They then induce others to chant their glories. How can an insignificant person who daily goes through 3 states shamelessly induce others to chant his glories? He's unhappy with impersonators. There is a powerful Brahma Daitya in Radhadesh. Although he externally dresses like a Brahmana, internally he's a demon. That sinful person advertises himself as Gopal, and people therefore call him a jackal. Anyone who accepts someone other than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord is fallen, insignificant, and fit for living in hell. Now, sometimes the author of Vrindavan Das gets really wound up in expressions of love. He says some pretty intense things out of love. That sinful person, I therefore raise my two arms and boldly declare, Sri Gauranga is the Lord of innumerable universes. One is free from all bondage simply by remembering him. Indeed, even by remembering his servants, one is always victorious. Giving up all evil ways, worship the feet of such a Lord, whose glories are chanted throughout the entire world. In this way, Sri Gaurachandra, the Lord of Vaikuntha, happily enjoyed his scholastic pastimes in East Bengal. The Lord attracted a large number of students in East Bengal, and he would often wander on the banks of the Padmavati River. He had thousands and thousands of students there, so it is difficult to know who studied with whom. People from all over East Bengal came rushing to study under Nimai Pandit. The Lord taught them in such a merciful way that within 2 months, everyone became learned. Hundreds of students received titles and returned home, and hearing about this, many new students joined. In this way, the Lord of Vaikuntha enjoyed scholastic pastimes while staying in East Bengal. Meanwhile, back in Navadvip, Lakshmi is not doing so well. Lakshmi was in great distress due to separation from the Lord. She did not reveal this to anyone. She kept always engaged in the service of Mother Sachi without eating anything. Since the Lord's departure, she accepted some rice only in name, for she was deeply distressed in separation from the Lord. She passed the nights alone, crying incessantly. Her heart found no relief for even a moment. Eventually, Lakshmi could no longer tolerate separation from the Lord, and she desired to go join him. Lakshmi left a replica body on the bank of the Ganges in this world and went invisibly to the side of the Lord. She thus took the lotus feet of the Lord in her heart and in deep meditation departed to the banks of the Ganges. I cannot describe Mother Sachi's grief. Even wood melted on hearing her cry. Since I am unable to narrate such distressful pastimes, I have described them only in brief. All the devotees were grief-stricken on hearing about Lakshmi's disappearance, and they all duly performed her last rites. After staying in East Bengal for some time, the Lord desired to return home. When the people of East Bengal heard the Lord was returning home, they brought various gifts and wealth according to their capacity. They happily went to the Lord with gold, silver, water pots, asanas, colorful blankets, various clothing, and whatever other fine items they had in their homes. Lord Gauranga glanced mercifully at everyone as he accepted their gifts. After taking leave from them, Lord Gauranga happily started home. Many students came to Navadvip with the Lord to continue studying under him. Meanwhile, a pious swan-like Brahmana named Tapan Mishra arrived there. He's an important person, Tapan Mishra. He's making his appearance in the Lord's Leela, and we'll hear some more about him shortly. He then later, after Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, he went to Benares, and he, Tapan Mishra, and another Brahmana, a very elder Brahmana, Chandrasekhar Acharya, they stayed together, and Lord Chaitanya stayed at their home when he was traveling to Vrindavan. Tapan Mishra was confused about the goal of life and the means for attaining it. Moreover, he could not find anyone to clear his confusion. He silently chanted his Krishna mantra day and night, but since he was not practicing other important limbs of devotional service, he could not achieve a peace. While disturbed in this way, late one night, the fortunate Brahmana had an auspicious dream. A demigod appeared before the Brahmana Tapan Mishra and began to tell him some confidential topics. O sober Brahmana, please listen. Steady your mind, do not worry. Go to Nimai Pandit. He will explain to you the goal of life and the means for attaining it. He's not an ordinary human being. He's Narayana himself. He's performing his pastimes as a human being to deliver the people of the world. Don't disclose these facts to anyone, for this information is confidential even to the Vedas. If you do, you'll be unhappy birth after birth. So obviously he told somebody because we know it. After the demigod disappeared, the Brahmana woke up from his dream. After seeing that auspicious dream, he began to cry. Recovering from his trance, he exclaimed, "What good luck!" Then he immediately left to see the Lord. As the enchanting Sri Gaurasundar was sitting with his students on the bank of the Padmavati river, Tapan Mishra came there and fell at his feet. He got up before everyone with his hands folded. The Brahmana said, "I am the most fallen wretch. Please deliver me from this material existence by your merciful glance. I am ignorant of the goal of life and the means for attaining it. Therefore, kindly explain this to me. I do not find any pleasure in material sense enjoyment. Therefore, O merciful Lord, please tell me how I can find relief." So what's his answer going to be? The Lord replied, "Oh, Brahman, what can be said about your good fortune? Since you wish to worship Krishna, that is quite sufficient. Worship the Supreme Lord, however, is difficult to achieve. The Lord himself personally teaches the principles of religion for this age. He incarnates to establish 4 different religious principles in the 4 different ages, and thereafter he returns to his own abode to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium," he quotes Bhagavad Gita. Your son Krishna appears as an incarnation in every millennium. This is a Bhagavatam verse he's quoting. This is Narada speaking to Vyas, to Vasudeva in Dwarka. In the past, he assumed 3 different colors. This is the name-giving ceremony. Canto 10, Chapter 8. This is Gargamuni, name-giving ceremony of Krishna. Your son Krishna appears as an incarnation every millennium. In the past, he assumed 3 different colors, white, red, and yellow. And now he appears in a blackish color. In another, Dwarpa Yuga, he appeared as Lord Ramachandra in the color of Ashuka, or parrot. And such incarnations, all such incarnations have now assembled in Krishna. The Yuga Dharma for the age of Kali is the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. The 4 religious principles for the 4 ages are all meant for the deliverance of the conditioned souls. Whatever result was obtained, these are quoting Bhagavatam verses, whatever result was obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, in Dwarapa Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, can be obtained in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Therefore, the essence of all religious principles in the age of Kali is the sacrifice of the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. One cannot be delivered by following any other religious principle. The Vedas are unable to fully describe the glories of one who chants the Lord's name day and night, while even eating and sleeping. Please listen, dear Mishra. There is no other austerity or sacrifice prescribed in this age of Kali. One who worships Krishna is most fortunate. Therefore, go back to your home and worship Krishna with full attention, giving up all duplicity. By congregationally chanting the holy name, you achieve everything, including the goal of life and the means for attaining it. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. That's a verse from the scriptures. That's it. This whole little section is verse after verse from Bhagavatam and other scriptures on the importance of the holy name. Then he quotes the Kali Sanartana Upanishad, the whole mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This verse is called the Mahamantra. It contains 16 holy names of the Lord, composed in 32 syllables. If you continually chant this Mahamantra, the seed of love of God will sprout in your heart. Then you will understand the goal of life and the process for achieving it. After hearing these instructions from the mouth of the Lord, Tapan Mishra, the best of the Brahmanas, repeatedly offered obeisances to the Lord. Tapan Mishra then said, "Please allow me to live with you." And the Lord replied, "You should immediately go to Varanasi. I will meet you there and explain to you the truths about the goal of life and the process for attaining it." The Lord then embraced him, and out of ecstatic love, the hairs of Tapan Mishra stood on end. Tapan Mishra felt spiritual ecstasy after receiving the Lord of Vaikuntha's embrace. At the time of departure, he caught hold of the Lord's feet and confidentially described the incident of his dream. How are we doing? It's a little bit long, huh? Should I keep going? Because we have some newer people here. You're not used to hearing sitting so patiently through all this. What to do? We're okay. It'll be over in a little while. But oh, up to? Oh. Okay. I've exceeded my quota. Okay. Thank you for that note. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, Super Soul was sending me a little signal. I think it's taking too long. So, just stepping back from all of this, because we've touched on the Bhagavatam, we touched on something from Bhagavad Gita, we touched on something from Lord Chaitanya's life. Namanya Nantasya Yushon Kitan, that same verse from the preface, beginning with the name and then etc. The name, form, qualities, and pastimes. So we're hearing name, form, qualities, and pastimes. We're hearing about the beauty of Lord Chaitanya. Anyway, each of those items have been touched on. And here we are, sitting in a, home in suburbs, nice townhouse. And what town is this? Chantilly? Did I pronounce it correctly? Okay. And we're hearing about the personality of Godhead. Now, most people don't get together and hear about the personality of Godhead. In anticipation of Gaur Purnima, which is why we're doing this, it's to honor the appearance of Krishna coming to teach how to connect with him in loving service. There's a really nice when Prabhupada was traveling in 1975, he visited Mexico, then he visited Caracas, then he visited Miami, and then he visited Atlanta. And in both Caracas and in Miami, there were deity installations of Gaur Nitai. And Prabhupada cried at both places. And when he was in Caracas, he said, here we are in this remote place, and Lord Chaitanya has kindly made himself available for everyone to approach and worship. He's so merciful, and he couldn't continue speaking. He choked up, and Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda are so merciful. And the same thing happened when he went to Atlanta, because they were Gaur Nitai deities, the center of the altar. There's Radha Krishna on the side, Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra on the other side, and Gaur Nitai in the middle. And he said some nice complimentary things about the devotees and how good their temple is. And then he started speaking about Gaur Nitai, and he couldn't continue speaking. He became too emotional, spiritually emotional, because they're very, very merciful. So that's what is being said here, Vrindavan Das. He's, when Vrindavan Das was 3 years old, Lord Chaitanya had taken sannyas that year. His mother, the author that we just read from, his mother was Narayani. When she was 4 years old, Lord Chaitanya called her to show Srivas Pandit that his opulences and ordered her, Narayani, chant Krishna's name in ecstatic love of God. And she just burst out in tears and called out Krishna's name ecstatically and began rolling on the ground. He wanted Srivas to understand there was some talk, a gossip, rumor going around that too much chanting, loud chanting, the king is going to come with his army and smash all of Navadvip. And Srivas was thinking, oh, the devotees will be at risk because this is a Muslim ruler and too much chanting and he's going to make a big problem. So Lord Chaitanya wanted him to be fearless. So he was protecting of the devotees, but showing loving pastimes for everyone. Lord Narayan and his goddess of fortune Lakshmi engaging in pastimes like a Brahmana in a village, or a learned place. Navadvip at that time was a seat of high learning. So it's quite amazing. Now, if it's taken just as a Harry Potter story or something, or Alice in Wonderland, or a fairy tale or something, then it really doesn't have take it or leave it. But it's not that kind of literature. This is the personality of Godhead making its appearance for the purpose of showing the world how to take full shelter of Krishna. And he's doing it through his pastimes, and hearing about his pastimes in this way has that potency. So I'm sorry I got carried away a little bit. I didn't mark the page. But we'll continue tomorrow. So now if there's some discussion, we'll have a little time for discussion, and then looks like we're going to have an installation of Bhagavatam, yeah? So any comments or questions? Thank you all for sitting patiently and letting me get carried away here. Any reflections or comments? Okay, so you have something?
Guru Maharaj, why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traveled to East Bengal? It was not for propagating the chanting of the holy name. It seems like it is for teaching grammar. But the purpose behind is something else, Maharaj, that I'm not understanding.
There's lots of things we don't understand. And I can say a few things about a little bit that I understand, because it's not fully explained. He from the midday class, there's stages of evolving. In his pastime, he's like a mischievous little boy, and then he's kind of like a proud, challenging scholar, student. Then he becomes a little more, respectful and docile. And he had now association of Isvara Puri. He served Isvara Puri. He heard from Isvara Puri. He offered meals to Isvara Puri. So now his devotional life is evolving, he's not yet at the, outburst stage, the total ecstatic stage that happens when he received initiation from Isvara Puri, but he's like an evolutionary stage. So he's going for the purpose of giving teachings, but obviously from what we just read, his teachings have to do with Krishna Bhakti, like his discussion with Tapa Mishra and the importance of chanting. So he's received it and he's imparting it. So it's an evolutionary stage. For Tapa Mishra, that was just one person that has a later role in his pastimes, but he's giving association to others. The scholarly pastimes are continuing, and the devotional pastimes are evolving. And then there's different persons, including his mother, including Lakshmi Priya, and there's exchange, meeting and separation and service. So it says here, even to this day, by Lord Chaitanya going to East Bengal, now Bangladesh, he was sanctifying the place, and the tendency to have devotion for Lord Chaitanya is still there by his going there. Anyway, that's least superficial or surface understanding of what he was accomplishing. All right?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Okay, so we'll have a little arti for installing the Bhagavatam. You have something online? Oh, there's something online. Before we...
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, this question is from Radha and Vishaka. How to overcome sadness in anticipation of recovery when a family member is critically ill with COVID, and also at the same time prepare for Lord Chaitanya's appearance?
Okay, this is a 9-year-old and her younger sister who is, I forget her age, 5 or 6, something like that. Because their mother's mother back in India has just been in the hospital for some number of days with COVID. So they're asking how to handle that while you're anticipating the appearance of Lord Chaitanya's Gaur Purnima. The philosophy is one thing and our emotions are another thing. The philosophy is, in this world, from Bhagavad Gita, now, because I know the two girls, from Bhagavad Gita, we know Krishna's teaching that there are 4 things that are impossible to overcome in this world. And that's birth, death, disease, and old age. So disease and death, that's just part of what this place is. And when it comes, it doesn't make it any easier to handle, but it's just part of what this place is. So your mother is likely going to try to go and be with her mother. And but everything is in Krishna's hands. So her mother may recover, may not recover. But, the acceptance of the reality that disease will come and death will come is part of what you and your mother and your father are going to have to deal with, because it's one of those realities of life that's out of our hand. What you can do, each one of us can do, is choose how we respond. So you, 2 girls, you can offer prayers, you can try to chant and hear with greater purity, with offering the fruits of that sacrifice of hearing and chanting to your grandmother, and make your effort like that, make your sacrifices unto Krishna for her benefit, because your well-wishing will go to her. That's how it works spiritually. And then anticipating the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, that's light is coming your way. So through a period of difficulty and turmoil, and I don't know what your relationship with your grandmother is, but yeah, I know what your relationship with your mother is. So she's, I'm sure, feeling great distress because she sent me a note, as did your father. So be strong so your mother doesn't have to worry about you. Let her focus her attention on caring for her mother, and you look for the light of anticipating Lord Chaitanya's appearance. Continue to hear his wonderful pastimes. I can suggest to both of you, have your father show you where the pastime is of the death of Srivas Pandit's son during one of the kirtans at Srivas's home. Read that section and see how Lord Chaitanya responds to the death of Srivas Pandit's son, and how all the other people in the house of Srivas respond. It's very interesting. Okay. That's it? 10 and 7. Okay, they had their birthday. 10 and 7. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.